Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Pelt Music Podcast. Shortly, we'll be chatting with Demob Happy, who recently released their new album, Divine Machines. But before then, the usual reminders from myself. If you would, please do follow Pelt on social media. We're on Facebook at Pelt and on Twitter and Instagram at Pelt Music. And again, if you would, please do hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, wherever you're watching or listening. Welcome, Matt from Demob Happy, to the Pelt Music Podcast. Absolutely delighted to have you on. How are you doing this really sunny day?
I'm all right. Hot and bothered because we've chosen one of the nicest days of the year to be doing our rehearsals in a dark, dingy room. So we're all a little bit gutted we're not outside, but needs must. You got to do. You got to do. But no, it's good. I'm good. It's all sounding really good. We're really excited. So.
Yeah, and so you should be. Obviously, a lot for us to talk about and cover off in this. But as we were talking about the weather, I mean, the weather hasn't actually been the best this summer. But you have been out. You've played some festivals in the UK. That was Download and 2000 Trees, which I was lucky enough to catch it. Both of those. So, just how has your summer been? And what were those shows like for you?
It's been good, man. Yeah, we ended up doing a few festivals in the end. 1000 Trees. We did a couple abroad. We did one in France and Prague and stuff. It's been really good. It's been really nice. I think to be honest, we were quite happy to have a little bit of a break because the getting the album ready was a really long process, and because we're such a DIY band, involved in every aspect of it, from like making the videos and making artwork and sort of planning tours, and we basically do everything. So it's nice to have a little bit of a break and just enjoy the summer. But then, of course, the summer went and decided that it wasn't going to be a nice summer, and I just ended up being inside anyway. So, but
yeah,
no, it was good. It was awesome playing the shows. Playing a few. It's always good playing the UK kind of rock festivals like Download and 2000 Trees, because I feel like it's an underrepresented thing in festivals, and there's less and less just pure rock and roll festivals. So yeah, we had a great time. It's always fun.
Yeah,
I highlight of the year festivals, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely love the summer season. So it's a shame that it is gone, even though suddenly the weather has emerged out of nowhere. Typical, but just in time for your tour, which we will delve into shortly. But we'll start off with the recorded side of things, and obviously Divine Machines, your third album, come out at the end of May now, so roughly just over 3 months ago. And obviously we touched on the live shows. And you had some album release shows around then as well. So the first question just is, 3 months down the line, how have you found the reception to the album?
I mean, it's been amazing, really. It was a long time coming, obviously because of the artificial kind of slowdown of everything because of COVID. But even still, we hadn't put an album out since 2018, and we were kind of motoring in 2020 to start recording something and put something out. And I think if it wasn't for COVID, we would have had something out, maybe late 2020 or early 21. So it was a waiting game because we didn't want to put something out into a black hole, and we knew how good the songs were and how excited we were by it. And we wanted to give it its dues, So there was a lot of patience, I think, from our audience, just waiting and waiting for us to do something. And it was really nice when we kind of came back and it felt like everyone was still on board and everyone was still, happy to have new stuff from us. But then, it's always then an arduous wait from actually announcing the album in January, whatever it was, and then coming out in May felt like the longest 4 months ever, But no, the reaction was amazing. Everyone just immediately sort of got what we were doing, what we were talking about, and the sorts of noises we were making seemed to really appeal. So yeah, the reaction's been amazing. It's been great.
Yeah, and I'm glad you felt it, because as I touched on with you a little while ago, that album is absolutely phenomenal, and I definitely encourage listeners to check it out. As the first two albums I've really, really enjoyed, but Hit and Play on Divine Machines, I was really just struck that this album really just resonated for me. Musically, sonically, it is cliche, but a masterpiece. You know,
Oh,
it
thank
is
you.
really, really good. And obviously, it's interesting that you touched on that. It was roughly 5 years since the predecessor, and obviously, yes, the pandemic kind of slowed things down, as you say. But it's also the first release with Liberator music as well. So
Yeah.
obviously, a bit of a delay and a bit of a change since you put out your
Yeah.
second album. So what was the process like for you this time around?
Well, it was a case of our last label and us. We were it was like a mutual breakup, you know. There was like we were happy to leave them and they were happy to kind of let us go. So it was all we were all still friends kind of thing. But then signing to Liberate was a really cool sort of step up, you know, for us. And it's a brand new kind of indent of a really well established Australian label called Mushroom, and it's their new like UK and kind of worldwide thing. And we were one of the first two signings on the new record on the new label. And that was really cool because it kind of felt like it was just such an uncertain time over COVID. Like, what's going to happen? You know, just all of our sort of plans dissolving away. And then it being, you know, I'd ended up making demos for the record by almost, you know, even like 60% of what you hear on the record kind of finished by August 2020 because I just smashed through it in those first few months of lockdown. Felt really inspired and got it all done. And so really we were kind of shopping the demos out from that stage. But because the industry was just like had no idea what was going on. No one was really biting apart from Liberator. We're like, yes, this is fucking amazing. Let's do it. Which was really, really cool. But then, of course, yeah, like you say, like just getting that signed took like a year, and it was just a game of patience. But then actually going in to record it proper, we kind of took a lot of what I'd worked on at my home studio and then beefed it up in the studio. Maybe did, yeah, like an extra 30%, 40% kind of thing. Was really, really fun. We did that in May 2020, sorry, 2022. And then again, it was just like the work begins, you know, all of this work, you think, all right, great, I'm done. And then it's like, oh no, shit, the work actually begins now. So there was a lot of like working on it afterwards, you know, mixing it, sort of doing extra stuff. Like, you know, like one of the bands, like if you ask any of us in the band, like what our favorite songs are, Earth Mover will always be up in the top three, depending on the day, you know, and that literally came together in the dying hours of the studio session. You know, we were like, right, we've got a few hours left. It's about 3 a.m. on the last night. We have this idea. We'd been trying to do a load of different things with it and it wasn't quite working. So we were like, right, you know what? Let's just get it as much as we can, and then I'll sort of sort it out later. And that's basically what we did. We sort of recorded a version of it that we had, and then primarily the drums, and then I fiddled with it over the next couple of months and things, and then it ended up being on the record. But it was a very late edition. It was like almost didn't make it on. And, you know, songs that we'd long established were like, that's definitely going to be this linchpin on the record. It kicked them off, you know. It was just like, fuck, this is too good. So yeah, so the process is a long one, man, but it's a really beautiful process that I really enjoy, you know, producing it and putting it all together. It's like it's a different hat, you know. The songwriting hat is the wonderful spark of the idea, and then the production is kind of molding it and experimenting with sounds and getting into this thing sonically. So when you say like you like the sonics of it, that's really nice because do spend a lot of time kind of crafting a particular sound that we like, you know. So I'm glad.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, it's called a labor of love for a reason, because obviously, you know,
Oh, no doubt.
it
Yeah.
is a labor, you know, the intensive work that goes into, you know, especially that after portion, as you say, the mixing and producing of the record,
Mm-hmm.
once you've actually laid it down on tape, you know, is so you know, painstaking to get
Mm-hmm.
through. But obviously, you know, if you love doing it, as you obviously do, then it doesn't feel quite that way. But I guess
No,
um a
it's
lot of
still really painful though. It's
yeah.
like the long hours and the sleepless nights. Like I beat myself up over the tiniest details, you know. So I really like to get things exactly how I like them. I think it's just like I've got such a particular idea and about what I want it to sound like, but it does become like, banging your head against the wall, just like, why isn't this exactly right? But then you get there, you just got to persevere, man. You eventually get there.
Yeah, definitely. And
Mm.
I try not to talk about the pandemic too much on these anymore because
Mm.
obviously
Yeah,
we
it is
want
a
to
bit
move beyond it. But it is
boring, isn't it?
interesting. It is. But um, obviously, one thing that it did do for a lot of musicians was give time that they didn't expect to have. And obviously,
Mm.
it's a similar sort of experience with yourself. And but as a positive in many ways, but there's a negative to it that a lot of artists have spoken to me on the podcast about. In that, to your point a moment ago, you've they had more time to play with the music after in the post-production sort of period, and they almost found
Mm.
themselves forcing themselves to go back and tinker with it again and again, when actually if they had the pressure of a release date coming up, then they would have cut off a lot sooner and not gone back to it as much, and they felt a bit of regret about going back to the music as much as they did. Was
Right.
that something you had to battle with as well?
Not really, to be honest. I had the exact opposite because I think we've always been frustrated that we haven't been able to tinker more. Because we've always kind of gone into the studio and been a little and worked with people, but it's the weirdest kind of abstract thing trying to describe ideas that you have in your head, which are musical, and putting it into words. And when you've tried 6 or 7 times to kind of translate this abstract musical idea and you're not quite getting there, it gets really frustrating. And we've always been frustrated that we never had, we'd call it like the fairy dust, that we've always wanted like an extra week or two to just put in those little things, like all of the magic stuff that people hear when they listen to classic records, like, all over Beatles stuff, all over like Pink
Mm.
Floyd stuff is just like the little bit of experimentation that the time that they had allowed them to be like, ooh, this is the normal way to do it, but what about if we just do it a little bit differently? Like, because of the way the industry's set up at the minute, you don't really, because it's like in out of the studio, because studios cost a lot, budgets are so much lower, you know, you've really got to be very utilitarian with your time. Um, it doesn't really leave a lot of room for that. So the fact that we could then take it away and I could work on it and tinker with it and essentially sort of add all of that fairy dust even before we went and did the extra bits of the tracks. It was a really weird Frankenstein way that we did it, basically. I loved having that extra time, like really sitting with the songs and experimenting with synthesizers and coming up with things and making it this. I think that's just why there's so much going on in that record because of that time. But I love that. That's like my bread and butter. I love having that time. I think you've got to be careful. Like you got to know when to stop.
Hmm.
But I've learned, I think, when to stop, and when to think, oh no, there's a little bit more juice can be squeezed out of this idea. You just got to know yourself, I think.
Definitely, that is the key to it, and obviously, all the little nuances on there. I say just feed into the sonic, sound and everything on the record. And I say I
Mm,
can't praise it enough, and
thank you.
it's one of the ones where for listeners, I'd recommend you just sort of sit in a darkened room with your
Hmm.
headphones on and just lose yourself in the music and listen to
Mm,
those little nuances, because it would
yeah,
be such a rewarding experience for you if you do. So yeah,
thanks.
that's my recommendation to listeners. And obviously to delve into one of the tracks, obviously Voodoo Science was the lead single, and I'm
Hmm.
always curious because the lead single in the campaign for an album is a really important choice. It's a
Mm.
decision to make. Right, how are we going to lead this phase of the band and obviously present ourselves to the audience? So what about Voodoo Science made it that standout song that you felt, yeah, this is the one, this is what we're going to lead with this time around?
I think it was just like the riff, really, the power of it and the immediacy of it. Like that's what labels and radio guys and playlist guys and everything are always looking for, that real. And it's like worse than ever before. If they used to
Yeah,
talk about 3.5 minute songs, it's now like you're at risk if you're pushing 2 minutes kind of thing. It's we're in a weird place. But it was just like the immediacy of it, the kind of it felt like the most. I don't think it's actually representative really of the album as a whole. It's like one of the kind of prongs of the album. But it just felt like the most kind of right, knock the doors down. It was like there are a few ways to approach like
Yeah.
a new single from a record, especially when you haven't released music in a while. And one of those methods is knock the doors down. And that it was like that was the obvious contender for that method. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
And it just felt right. And yeah, it felt like the right one.
Yeah, definitely right choice in my mind as well. And
Yeah.
yeah, always fascinating to get that just opinion on that, because it can
Mm.
be quite contentious for a lot of
It can
bands.
be,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, definitely.
It was definitely like because that was actually a late edition as
Mm,
well. That I only finished sort of putting that one together really in the last couple of months before we went into the studio in May 2022. So it was like other than Earth Mover, like the last one. Um and we'd already signed the deal by then and everything. And I was kind of like, oh, by the way, everyone, I've got this new idea. And the label just went, fuck, that's has to be single number one. Like you have to do that. And I went, oh, okay. You know, we'd already set our minds on what the album was going to be. But then that's, you know, some ideas are just like undeniable, really. You just go, okay. And so we didn't have a problem with that, you know. So we were quite happy to just be like, yeah, all right.
yeah.
You know, we'll choose our battles with stuff like that. And when we really don't agree, like we had a long battle with the album title. We had a different name for it at first, but the label and like management and stuff just weren't digging it. And we thought, okay, so Divine Machines, although we love it now, it took a long time
Mm,
to settle on. And that was the first time we've experienced that. Because in other albums, it was just like, should we call this Dream Soda? And the label go, yeah, okay. We go, all right. You know, like Holy Doom, yeah, how's that? Yeah, good. All right. It's literally how quick it's been. No pushback at all. But then the label did push back a little bit. And so we wanted to call it Muscular Reflex. Because for us, that was the kind of like the beating heart of the record. And to me, it's my favorite song and it means a lot to us, that song. And we felt like it was just this, it summed up it in a way, Divine Machines was this attempt to sort of semantically say that in a different way. The idea of this kind of muscular reflex, this kind of the because the kind of organic but electrical aspect of consciousness and humanity and the soul and things like that, you know, and it's like the muscular reflex of the heart, but it comes from emotions and the soul. So it's like the soul meets the body, you know what I mean? That kind of
yeah.
crossover. And that was a really important theme throughout the record. And but Divine Machines then sort of did that as well. So everyone breathed a sigh of relief when we came up with that because they really didn't like. They were like, we love it as a song title.
Yeah.
We don't want to call the album that. And we were like, what? Because we loved it, but I don't know.
Yeah,
Anyway.
well, there's so many different elements that go into a decision like that these days, and obviously, like algorithms and all that probably feed into it all as well.
Yeah,
But
there's a lot of stuff.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, Divine Machines is a great album title anyway. So I say it
We loved it in the
definitely
end.
definitely worked out well. And
Yeah.
you touched on earlier music videos. People that
Mm,
watch these podcasts know I'm a bit obsessed with music videos because
mm,
I used to just religiously sit in front of the TV as a teenager watching music TV, and it's a
mm,
lost art form these days. Not many
mm,
bands actually have videos for me to talk to them about, unfortunately, because as you say, budgets have shrunk, and that's normally one of the
mm.
first things that gets shuffled off to the side. No, we can't afford a video. All three of these
Yeah.
singles from the album have had really cool
Mm,
videos that have accompanied them that have really fit the songs themselves, but the overall aesthetic of the album as well.
mm-hmm.
Really interested, obviously, to hear. That is a big thing for you to be personally, as a band involved in the creation of that. So,
Mm-hmm.
how do you go about conceptualizing the videos, especially for this album, obviously?
Well, we worked with a director who's a friend of ours who we've known for quite a few years called Jay Bartlett. And when we were first talking about music videos and what we'd kind of like to do, I basically just reached out to him and was like, because we've done odds and sods with him in the past, but I've always loved his sense of humor and sort of he's like a perfect mixture of he really knows what stylistically looks cool and how to make us look good, but also he's just got this sort of slightly wry, slightly daft sense of humor, which we love as well, which is just right up our street. And I think really originally it was just like I reached out with this kind of strange sort of very kind of like space opera idea, this kind of grand idea of like making this whole set that we were going to like do various videos in and all this. And that was in like the summer of 2022. And really it was just then like a conversation from then of just sort of batting things back and forth. We had a very strong idea visually of how we wanted the album to look because it has this kind of, we always felt like it had this sort of sci-fi Blade Runner feel to it, especially some of the synthesizers I use. Like, we think the kind of Tear It Down is the sort of really, if like Muscular Reflex is the heart of the album, that's the kind of body. It's the sort of that's the nexus of a lot of the, like when we put that song together, it was like, okay, we know what album 3 is going to be now because that song is such an identity, and it has just this such a Blade Runnery kind of future sort of noir, slightly dystopian but utopian feel to it in across the album and across the songs and the lyrics and everything. We knew that the videos had to reflect that in some way, and that it had to be representative of that to really speak to the album. And I think what came first? I think actually the video for Token was the first one that we sort of settled on because we said we had it was trying to create basically these experiences and film like these shots and this feeling that felt grand and felt quite broad and sort of filmic and cinematic on essentially like a tiny budget. And that's what you're essentially doing with like music videos these days. You get a minuscule budget, and then it's very much up to you to sort of figure out how to do that. And Jay is a very good sort of grifter as well, and he knows how to get stuff for now and how to do stuff. And Demob have always been like that, because we've always had to be. And this was the biggest budget we've ever had for these 3 videos by about 100%. We normally have £100 to spend on a video, and most of the time it was like, with Loosen It, which is one of our favorite videos, it was just the label. It was a Wednesday, and the label were like, right, we want a video on Friday. I was like, what? How? So I borrowed a camera and was said to the lads, like, come round, we'll have some beers, and let's just dance about in front of the camera, and we'll film it. And then that was what the video was. And so actually having time and having money, albeit smaller than it ever used to be, was really cool. And yeah, it was really just a conversation of like, how can we make this look as close to as possible of like a Blade Runner budget with having absolutely no money and making it not look shit at the same time, because the worst thing you can do is like aim for something and fail.
Yeah.
So it's got to you've got to like reduce the kind of scope to the point where it looks good, but it doesn't look underwhelming. You know what I mean? And Jay's just so good at that, and he was so clever. And then after that it was just like aesthetics, like the filmic look, the kind of grain, the sort of colors, the slightly sort of posed sort of fourth wall kind of aspect to it. And just to create an atmosphere. But I love getting involved in all of that. It's such a fun part of the process.
Yeah, and it definitely comes across. And obviously, yeah, yourselves and Jay have done a great job with those 3 videos. I love music videos, and being able to sit and watch them before I talk to the bands that come on the podcast. And I say, sadly, all too often these days, there's not actually a video for me to watch. So, I mean, you've really spoiled me with the 3. And
yeah. We were happy we got to do that, man. And
yeah,
it was just really cool to have the opportunity and have the chance to do that, and to put it into the visuals of the album. Because yeah, like you say, it's a dying art really. And it's a shame because there's a lot of creativity then just getting sort of wasted, you know. But yeah, I mean, I guess what you're gonna do, like MTV used to be a thing, and now it's just YouTube, and you just don't making, you know, the budget's not just not there. It's just the reality of things.
Yeah, very sad reality. But I mean, obviously, listeners, the links for the videos will be in the bio for the podcast. And obviously, as you touched on there, Matt, it's YouTube these days that we go to. It's on demand. So I definitely encourage all the listeners to go and check out those videos ahead of the tour, which
Yes.
obviously, as we talk today, starts in about 2 days' time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really decent tour again. It's not like, these days, tours tend to maybe just be London, Manchester, Birmingham, Glasgow if the Scots are really, really lucky. You've got a fair few more on there. So plenty of chance for the listeners to come and obviously catch the band at a show. What should they expect, obviously, if they're going to come along and spend their money on a Demob Happy show on this run? What would they expect this time around?
Well, I think we're thinking a lot about this time about sort of how to make it an experience for everyone that isn't just I'm watching a band play. You know, like we're really putting time and thought into kind of breaking that fourth wall. Like for us, it was always just like turn up and play as loud as possible, and fuck off, you know. And I think for us now, with how the sort of more mature sound to the album and the scope of it and things like that, and how, now that we've got a couple of ballads and slower songs and moments that you can really touch people with, then I think you then it's allowed us to create more of a show, you know, whereas it was always just like bish bash bosh, players, you know, blow everyone's heads off and then leave, you know. But now it's a bit okay, so we can take people on a journey, we can bring it down. There can be tender moments, they can be really anthemic moments or whatever, you know, people rock out, and that's the thing I think for us is has been a cool thought process because we like the drama of stuff, you know, we're theatrical and like we like that. So your listeners can expect a very good time. They will be entertained. We like to have a laugh, you know, there's always a bit of audience participation, you know, we like to like have a crack on and just sort of, you know, have fun. We've been playing together for so long that me and the lads are just so tight as musicians that we could play with our eyes closed, you know. So that allows us a freedom to just really have fun, you know, just kick back and enjoy it basically. And I always hope that people know that we're enjoying it and how honored and happy we are to be there, you know. And yeah, a good time, just a good time.
Which we all need because the world is tough. So we all need a good time right now. And I haven't caught you in the
Yeah.
summer. You guys are on form, and I definitely encourage the listeners to pop along to a show. And
Mm.
that includes as well, obviously, once you've finished up in the UK, you're over in Europe, and then you've also got US tour in October, which includes some dates with Death from Above, which obviously
Yeah.
I bet you're looking forward to them. So yeah,
Oh,
how
massively.
excited are you for the obviously EU and US portions
Yeah,
of tour?
massively,
Yeah.
man. I mean, it's a dream like getting to do all of this stuff, you know. We love touring in Europe as well. Just it just is it's just so different. It's familiar obviously, but it's different and it's a beautiful way to see the world, to kind of see it like that. And the shows are selling really well, which is really, really cool. You know, Paris is sold out, and all the rest of them are doing really well. Amsterdam sold out. And this is the first time that we've really had a tour like this, which has sold out, you know, in multiple dates before the shows, before it even begins. So that for us is really, really cool. And you know, in America, it's just like it's the dream, man. It's like what everyone dreams of when they're in a band of like touring the States, coast to coast, you know, seeing all the sights. And then yeah, when now that we get to do these dates with Death from Above, who are just total heroes of ours, you know, absolutely one of the first bands that we all agreed on when we first got together, of being like, these guys are amazing, you know. So that's a real honor as well. That's really cool. But it's fun. It's just a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of miles and it's tiring, and you gotta pace yourself, you know.
Yeah.
It's a, what do they say? It's a marathon, not a sprint touring.
Definitely. Definitely
So
is. But I wish you all the best with the shows coming up. I say, if I'm a listener listening to this, definitely try and pop along to one of the shows near you.
mm,
All the dates will be available again through a link in the bio, or a link to the
mhm,
band's website. Obviously, I encourage everyone to check the tour date section out, and obviously follow the band across social media. That's the way we all
mhm.
stay up to date with each other these days. I always give out the social handles, but they should flash up on the video version of this as well. On Instagram, it's Demob_happy. And on
Yeah,
Facebook and Twitter, Demob happy. So you've made my life
yeah.
really easy. There's no massive, long, winded
No,
handles on there that we've got all
funnily enough,
different.
there wasn't any other Demob Happies out there, so we didn't have to try too hard to
Yeah.
claim those.
Yeah, always an occupational hazard these days trying to get the social media handles for the bands, because obviously most band names are taken, and obviously most social media handles are taken because it's not just
Exactly.
bands that use it; it's everyone. So it is difficult, but
Yeah.
you've done really really well, and it's been absolutely phenomenal getting a chat to you about all of this, because I say I can't rave on about the album enough for listeners.
Thank you.
So I definitely encourage them to follow you on social media, and obviously pick up an album if they can, come along to show if they can. And that brings us to the final portion of the
Mm,
podcast, which we've brought in recently, which is something called Magic Wand. So
mm.
obviously the music industry is facing tough times. There's a lot of issues out there, and for what it's worth, we like to give our guests a magic wand, and they can fix one thing, but one thing only, about the music industry. So Matt, if I was to give you the magic wand, what would you like to try and fix today?
See, I'm torn now because there's part of me want to say some of the difficulties they're experiencing on the tour because like touring costs so much money and it you really do get. I think maybe I'll choose this. All right, we'll just go for this. I think what people don't realize is when we play shows is I think they don't realize the venues take so much. Like, you see, the thing is, I need to be careful here, right?
Mm,
Because we've done shows for venues, independent venues, who are very, very good, and they don't rinse bands. But there are some venues which do rinse bands. And I think people don't necessarily realize that they think, oh shit, you're doing a tour of America and Europe, you must be like absolutely raking it. And in reality of it is like we'll be lucky to make a pound profit.
yeah,
It's like it is all expense. It costs such a lot of money, but ticket prices haven't gone up at all, really, for bands of our size. Like, it's been 13 quid or something to come and see a band like us for like 2 decades or something. But like, whereas people are happy to go and pay 150 quid to see megastars or whatever. So it's I think if I were to change anything, I'd some awareness, or at least just some. See, I need I need to be careful because I don't want to piss anyone off who are the good guys. But this is systemic where there isn't enough funding for the arts, and so there isn't enough funding for venues, and so a lot of those venues then have to charge or be a bit tighter with their overheads, and then that ends up falling on the bands. We play in Brighton, we pay for the bar staff, we pay for the security, we pay for the sound guy, we pay for the lighting, we pay for hiring in the sound desk, we pay for like the barriers, we pay for everything, but we don't get a cut of the bar.
yeah,
So it's like, oh, so we've paid for the entire venue to operate, but we don't get any of the profit of the venue. And we're walking, we sell 750 tickets in Brighton or whatever, and we walk away with maybe nothing. And I don't think people realize like how tight it is. So I guess if there was one message that I'd give out is merch. If
yeah,
anyone is happy to sort of buy one less pint and spend, however much the ridiculous prices that drinks are now on a bit of merch, then they should, because it makes more difference to bands than you realize buying a bit of merch. Every little bit sort of contributes, and it means that we can walk away going like, oh, amazing, we've done this for everyone, and it's a mutual thing. And all right, great, the staff get paid, the venue makes a bit of money, everybody's happy, but at least the artist isn't the only one who's walking away skinned, which is
yeah.
the problem most of the time.
Oh, I
Especially
do,
when
I
you
do.
consider Spotify, you consider all the rest is like
Yeah.
We're basically kind of sleepwalking into a situation where musicians, unless they have big record labels or come from families who are already rich enough to support them through all of the difficulty, we're not going to have any more. We're not going to have any working class musicians left. We're not going to have anyone who's of that tier, of that ilk, and that's a really bad thing. That's
It is.
bad news for everyone. So yeah, there's
Yeah.
that's my message, and that's
Yeah.
what I would change. Something in that ballpark area about all of that.
And it's a fantastic pick. It really, really is. It's something I do
Yeah.
drone on this podcast about a fair bit. I mean, obviously, it's such a fine balance between, let's say, like you've said, there's some really great music venues out there that really do support the artists. Don't like rinse them, and it's a desperate cycle, because obviously we need the venues to have the artists, but we need the artists to justify the venues, and obviously that whole ecosystem needs support. And the thing that fans can do, like you say, is buy tickets in advance rather than leaving it to the day of the show.
Massively,
They can
yeah.
obviously pick up merch when they're there, because that does really, really help. So obviously with the album, pick up a copy of the beautiful vinyl of the album. If you can, then it does help so much. And as you touched upon, I regularly say, I had an eye on, for example, the Red Hot Chili Peppers played in London this summer, and I had an eye on it because I do like the bands, wanted to see them live, 200 quid for a ticket. And I was just like, you know what? No, because I could go and see 10 bands, down my local venue and have 10 nights out for the same costs as that would have cost me, So, I mean, like,
it is. It's just it's getting a bit daft. Like but you see, everyone's prices are rising, and again, it's not complete profiteering, but it certainly isn't not profiteering. But none of that is trickling down to the lower levels. It just isn't. So yeah, what you say is true.
Yeah, definitely. Trickle down economics doesn't work in any form of society.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, definitely not. No, brilliant one. Again, thank you so much, Matt. Listeners, definitely
No worries.
encourage you, check out the album, head along to a show, buy some merch if you can. And obviously, yeah, I wish you all the best on the tour, Matt, and thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. It's been great.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. I really do hope you enjoyed that chat there with Demob Happy. Please do check out their new album, Divine Machines, and of course follow the band across social media to stay up to date with everything coming from them. You can also stay up to date with Full Pelt. We're on Facebook at Full Pelt and on Twitter and Instagram at Full Pelt Music. And again, if you would, please do hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, wherever you're watching or listening, because we'll be back very soon with another episode of the Full Pelt Music Podcast.